Hi guys, welcome back to Two Worlds Glide podcast. On today's episode, we have Gerard Rennick, one of the sharpest minds in the Australian political game. Gerard now runs a People's First Party, and I've got to be honest with you, I don't usually feel out of depth when interviewing people, but this one showed just how sharp he is. This is a man who genuinely loves his country, and you'll hear that in every single word he says. I hope you guys enjoy. It's awesome, but mate, thanks very much for coming on down Adelaide. Right. And so, because I've seen that you're doing a bit of a tour of Australia at the moment for People's First Party.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, I've been on the road for almost 2 weeks now. I've got one more night tomorrow night in Adelaide. Yeah, got 200 people coming. Which that was booked out last week, so that was really pleasing to see. Big turnout. And then I'm back home on Saturday, stopping at Orange and Tamworth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And obviously during the last election, because I actually followed your I actually voted for you as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Because you seem to be the only one talking sense.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, right? And I followed you a bit on X, and this is when I was a bit off social media as well, because I didn't have social media for years and years, because I just thought, especially during COVID, I need to get off this.
Yeah, I get that.
So I got off it, and then I came back on when I started the podcast. But your voice seemed to be one of the only voices in Australia actually making sense, right? And we're talking about like taxing big business, taxing royal or taxing the mining industry, and then your stuff and work around COVID. But your split from the Liberal Party is one of the things I want to start off with the podcast, right? And
yeah, sure.
Why that split occurred, because it seems like anyone that wants to talk about taxing big business, wants to talk about potentially we didn't make the right moves during COVID, and wants to put Australians first, they seem to get kicked out of the major parties.
Yeah.
So can you just give me a bit of a background on what happened there?
Look, when the knives in the Liberal Party, it was from the moderates, came after me, was when I withheld my vote over the COVID vaccine mandates and about a number of other measures, border closures, vaccine injuries, children, having to be, I think one of the conditions was they had to go back to school. There were 5 of them, and I can't remember all of them, but yeah. Yeah, okay, no worries. So the moderates, basically a senator put out an email that misled the members of the Queensland State Council that said that I'd voted against the voter ID bill. There was no vote on the voter ID bill because Sterling Grip, there was no vote at all in the Senate. But I'd spoken to Sterling Grip to find out what he was going to vote, because had he voted, I would have had to change my mind. But he just wanted to go off to committee, so that never happened. So a bit like this week, I don't know if you read the press this week, but it came out on Monday that in the Sydney Morning Herald, of course, the Sydney Morning Herald is always pumping the moderates up, that Peter Dutton was blaming Andrew Hastie for the election loss. Now, when I read that, I know both of them. And I knew straight away that was a lie.
Yeah.
But, the seed was planted, and it just reinforces the view that Andrew's a wrecker. Then they'll go, Andrew's not loyal to the Liberal Party, and that's how they'll start white-handing Andrew, right? So the similar thing that happened to Andrew has happened to me. Is
it also happening to Jacinta Price?
Yes. Yeah. Look, Jacinta didn't herself any favours by quitting the Nats straight after the election. I don't think that was wise, because the Nats had 5 senators in the Senate, which meant they had party status, which meant they have a whip. And it's really important to have a whip, because you need someone watching the chamber all the time. Because when you go to Canberra, there's lots going on. Lots of people want to see you. You've got to go to other committee rooms, backbench meetings, or at least most of us do. Some don't. So you've got to have someone, texting you, right, there's a division and this is what the division's about. So that's why you need a whip. So when she quit the Nats went from 5 to 4, which meant they lost their whip. So it just means it's harder for them to organise. And the whip gets the right to sit within the chamber and watch what's going on. So, and then to step into the Liberal Party room and then go for deputy straight away, she's only been there for 3 years. In my view, if you want to be leader of a major party or any party, you've got to be across a lot of issues, not just 1 or 2. And that is the problem with our politicians today. I mean, Labor's as bad, if not worse, that not enough of them are actually across a number of issues.
I don't think any of them are. It seems like none of them are. Even Penny Wong yesterday got asked about the ISIS brides coming back in and Australia assisting them, and she just couldn't answer it. And I just sat there and I'm like, you're the foreign minister of this country, and you can't even answer a simple question about bringing ISIS brides back into Australia.
Yeah.
I mean, it shows that they lied about it the entire time that was happening, right? Tony
Yeah.
Burke lied about it, Albo lied about it, and there was just all a big cover-up.
Yeah.
Turns out, through some military contacts, I know that these people came back in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
But bigger question for you, Sam. Who funds ISIS?
Well,
Do you want to go down that rabbit hole?
do you want me to be serious?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, geez, this might get me into trouble. I think more funding of ISIS definitely comes from Western type of backgrounds, potentially back through Israel as well. When Israel
Yeah.
were, when ISIS
Yeah.
were running their show, they never attacked Israel.
Yeah.
And you ask questions about that, right?
Let's put it this way. Assange, when WikiLeaks released an email from Jake Sullivan that was sent to Hillary Clinton back in around 2011-12, and the email said AQ is on our side in Syria, i.e. Al-Qaeda. Now Al-Qaeda is running Syria.
Yeah.
And the silence around the fact that the same terrorist organisation that it supposedly bombed the Twin Towers is now running Syria, and that's all okay. David Petraeus, the next CIA head, was interviewing that El Joffrey or whatever his name is a few weeks ago, and the UN had its general assembly was sitting. I mean, we'll go back to that later if you like. That's a big rabbit hole to go down to. But yet again, for me, I want to know, because there's a bigger war here and there's a bigger picture.
There is.
And, it just frustrates me how sometimes people go down, they look at they're looking at the puppets and not the puppeteers, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think there's some big globalization push, especially around immigration, especially around green energy, right? And to me, it stems back to the UN. And then you ask, like, who's in the UN? Who controls the UN? What are they doing?
No, I don't think it's the UN. I think you're looking in the wrong spot.
Oh, yeah? Who's that?
Yeah, big banks.
Big banks?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like they've got to keep what's the biggest market in the world?
I don't know. You tell me.
US Treasury bond market.
Yeah.
Got to keep that strong. And if you need, you're going to have, it's the biggest, and it's a paper market, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got the biggest paper market, it needs to be backed by the biggest physical market, which is oil. And the two biggest oil producers in the world are Russia and the Middle East. They're clearly not going to take out Russia, so they have to stop the oil from Russia being sold to Europe, right? Hence the Ukraine war. And they have to control the Middle East so they can make sure that the gas and the oil from the Middle East is sold in US dollars.
There you go.
Yeah, it's that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Ukraine war, October 2013, Viktor Yanukovych allowed Russia to sell gas through to Germany. If Russia had said to Germany, we'll take payment in euro, good night petrodollar. So that you can't have a relationship between Russia and Germany being the biggest country in the EU. Same reason for the Iraq war in 2003. 2001, Saddam said to the Europeans, we'll take payment in euro, and that was it. Saddam was a marked man after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of this sucks as well, right? Because especially with the Twin Towers, if you want to go down those sort of rabbit holes. But like I was a direct outlet or a direct effect from, these wars in the Middle East. I ended up going to the wars in the Middle East as well.
Yeah.
And, as a soldier so many years ago, and so many people, I hate talking about this subject as well, but I think I need to talk about it more and more, because I had friends die over there, and I'd had a cousin die over there.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, that's all right. 13 months before I went to Afghan, he died over in Afghan.
Yeah.
So for me, there's just so many, and it's so hard. And I heard this saying a while ago, and I don't think I'll quite hit it on the head, but it's hard to tell a soldier what he went to war for was not what he went to war for.
Yeah.
It was potentially something different,
Yeah.
potentially something
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah.
Potentially something. Well, there was a foothold that we wanted to in the Middle East that might not have been exactly what we were there for, or someone was pulling the strings behind it. But this has been wars for generations, right? Everyone goes for
absolutely.
something different. Like
Yep.
war is just old men discussing stuff and young men dying.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. We need to call it out, because you signed up to join the Australian Defence Force, not the Offence Force.
That's right.
And that's what politicians need to remember, is that it's your loyalty to this country, not other countries or their foreign banks who are using you to inflate their profits. Yeah. And you know what, I can't believe I'm saying that, because I grew up all starry-eyed about going off into battle and all that when I was a kid, but as I've gotten older, I've sort of started to see through a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm starting to see it now.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of military mates that listen to this podcast as well, and these are the hard discussions
Yeah.
You know, because we sacrifice so much.
You
sacrifice
do.
mates' lives, and you also sacrifice a big portion of, you know, how you live your life going forward as well. There's a lot of stuff I've had to change since Afghan. Yeah. You know, mental wise, PTSD wise, my relationships.
Yeah.
My sleep is like, I average like anywhere from 5 to 7 hours a night.
Yeah.
All stuff that is just, you know, you can literally bring it back to going on deployment to Afghanistan at the age of 22 or 21 or 20, whatever I was. So, but yeah, as you get older, you get more mature, you start to see things from a different angle or a different aspect, and you broaden your knowledge base and your horizon.
Yeah.
And I speak to a lot of mates about this, both in and out of the military. And you know, what we were seeing 5 to 10 years ago is not what was happening or not what's now. And you know, generally, you know, the historians or history is written by the winners.
That's right.
So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting to look back on 50 years time and what they you know or what was Afghanistan or Iraq or the whole Middle East, right, from like the year of like 2000 to 2020. Yeah. What actually happened there was what's his name, Dick Cheney, just giving out a whole bunch of no bid contracts to Halliburton with the oil stuff when they came into Iraq. What was all that? The Twin Towers, that's the worst one, because that old, you know, when you start to speak about this stuff and people start to call you a loony or a conspiracy theorist and that sort of stuff, it's like, well, you know, the questions now need to be asked. But yeah, I mean, you know, one day I might keep going down that rabbit hole, but for now, I think we've got a lot of issues in Australia.
Let's go back to monetary policy and tax policy in Australia. Yeah.
I think, I did some research the other day that Australians, everyone all up, we pay about $300 billion worth of tax a year. That's income tax. Yeah, maybe 330 or something like that.
So income tax is now over 50% of total tax collected, which the last time I looked was about 700 billion.
That's wild.
So they collect around 700 billion in taxes. Off the top of my head, it's been a while since I looked. 350 billion in income tax, 100 billion in company tax, 80 odd billion in GST, 20 odd billion in cigarettes tax, all that sort of stuff, and a few other things that it gets up to over 700 billion.
How much tax from big business?
It's around 100 billion, but it's the question you need to be asking is how much in profits are sent offshore by big business that aren't taxed.
Okay, so explain that to me.
So, 2022, our good friends Pfizer made $1.4 billion in sales here. They shifted $1 billion in royalties to Ireland. Okay, and because they class as an expense, royalties are an expense, they got a tax deduction on that $1 billion here in Australia, which meant we lost 300 million in company tax.
Wow.
Right, that's just one company. Now, there is a withholding tax to Ireland of 10 cents, so we did collect 100 million. So we were out of pocket 200 million for that, right?
And we just let them do it.
We just let them do it. That's exactly right. Now, I did a post on this earlier this week. It was a replay from a former estimates question I asked the ATO in estimates. And the guy that propped this up, I think, was on my side. But they haven't actually updated the tax treaty since 1983 for Ireland, which is incredible because Ireland joined the EU and have dropped their company tax rate from 40 cents to 12.5 cents. Because so that money that goes to Ireland gets to clip the ticket at 12.5 cents. And Pfizer's, so 10 cents plus 12.5 is 22.5 cents. Pfizer's 7.5 cents better off on $1 billion. So they make 75 million by just, doing a couple of journal entries, which, takes 5 minutes. Wow. But they've done it again this year. I just had a look at that latest. I did another post on this, the latest transfers of multinational, what their sales were and what their profits were. And their profits were again running at about an operating ratio of about 7%, when their worldwide operating ratio is about 35%. So Pfizer here claim about 93 cents in the dollar. Worldwide, they claim about 60 cents. So we know that they're shifting more profits offshore here than they are in other countries. And it's a simple reason. It's like our onshore tax rate's 30 cents. If you shift it offshore, depending on tax treaty, it's between 0 and 15.
Does everyone do this? Like Microsoft?
Yep, everyone.
Instagram, Facebook?
Yep. So if you go and Google your toilet breaks down, you go and Google a plumber here in Adelaide. So Google will claim that in Ireland. When I boosted my Facebook, my Facebook stuff during the election, I was billed by Facebook Ireland.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because of their bills. I've sometimes done that as well on Instagram.
Yeah.
Early on in the piece where you would promote posts.
Yeah.
And I'd look at it and I'd be like, there's a bill come from Ireland.
Yeah.
Why is that coming from Ireland?
Exactly. Like your content that's Australian made, the transmission lines, that go under sea, that transmit this data. I'm pretty sure Google and Facebook didn't build it. But it's not just them. Optus made $8 billion in sales here, and they've got a zero, paid no tax. So they must have declared a taxable income of zero.
What?
So they've shifted, not all $8 billion. I mean, there's genuine costs, right?
Yeah,
so there
yeah,
would
yeah.
be genuine costs.
Yeah, I understand that.
But what they do is they then just do a book entry. They create interest, royalties, and rent. You see, when General Motors, so this is the home of General Motors where we are here.
Down in Elizabeth.
Yeah.
That was
so
the
so
head factory.
when they were always saying that General Motors never made a profit here, no one ever asked how much in interest, royalties, and rent were they shifting back to Detroit. And I can tell you how much it would have been. It would have been enough to make sure they never made a profit here, because if you make a profit, you pay 30 cents. So that know-how. That's what, and I push that is one of the reasons why I'm staying in politics. I'd love to hop my high horse and ride off into the sunset, but no one understands the Tax Act in Parliament. And when I say the Tax Act, I'm talking about the relationship between onshore and offshore, transfer payments. Because it's like if Albanese said to you tomorrow, we're going to lift all visas, we're going to lift all immigration controls, there'd be pitchforks in front of Parliament House in the morning, right? But yet with taxation, we are literally encouraging our profits to go offshore. And then, I don't know if you know anything about a balance sheet of profit and loss, but the earnings rolls down into, the earnings you make roll down into your equity. So if you're not getting that equity and you've got to fund yourself, you've then got to borrow the money to survive, which is what we're doing. We're basically borrowing money because we're letting all our own profits go offshore.
Yeah, I definitely understand about our profit and loss as Australia. Like, what are we, almost $1 trillion in debt? Every single year, we spend more than we earn as a government.
Yeah.
From that, we sell our government debt as like government bonds. Places like China buy it, our superannuation buys it.
Yeah.
And then every single year, our taxes are going to paying that interest off.
Yeah, on our currency.
Yep.
Yeah.
When those taxes should be going to hospitals, schools, and back into the communities.
Yeah.
I've always said to myself, it blows my mind that a part of our taxes needs to go to a country that is spending more than they're earning, and they're paying off the interest. They're not even paying off the debt.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a household loan, what's your goal over 30 years to get that down to zero?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like our government just keeps going, don't worry about it. We just keep doing it.
Yeah. But when all that kicked off, right? You're probably too young to remember it. You may not have been born.
Is this when we moved away from the gold standard?
No. No, so it's when Keating moved. So basically, Keating lifted capital controls in 1985. So we had capital controls.
I wasn't alive then.
Yeah. Okay, so we had capital controls back then, which said we're not going to allow foreign debt to come into this country. So the 1937, going in a bit of history here, but the 1937 Banking Royal Commission said the central bank should always control the volume of credit in the system and keep an eye on the distribution of that credit by private banks. So remember, that currency of ours, that is our equity, right? So when Keating basically said we're not going to no longer control the volume of credit in the system by expanding our credit, right? We're just going to borrow foreign credit. So it started off in the 80s with the Japanese yen, and then it moved over in the early 2000s to the euro and the US, particularly after the GFC, because Howard and Costello at one point paid our debt off. So, they did do a good job there.
Early 2000s?
Early 2000s, yeah.
I remember reading that.
Initially, yeah. So... but the problem is when Keating did what he did, we had $8 billion in foreign debt in 1985. By 2008, we had $800 billion, right? And all the private banks did with that is on-lend it to people to buy houses, but it sent house prices from 4 times earnings to 10, 12 times earnings, which sent 2 people back to work, which then, 2008, there was the GFC. So, and then we had the cowboys from the superannuation who'd been around for 15 years. They told, some of these financial planners weren't qualified. They said to the older generation, go and borrow money against your investments, not your house against your investments. Those investments went tits up in the GFC, so they were then going to be forced to sell their house to pay off the debt on their investments. And then Kevin Rudd, just before Christmas 2008, what did he do?
No, I can't remember, mate. I was right in the army then. So.
Yeah, right. Well, he let foreign students buy houses.
Oh, yeah.
So can you see how that debt just stuffing, allowing credit, unfunded credit or unskewered credit into the country back in 85 created a childcare industry, because when you got house prices 10 times earnings, 2 parents going back to work, then you got the foreign student, boom, which has happened since 2008. And the other thing is it's dropped the birth rate from 2 to just over 2
to 1.5.
1.5. So you want to know why we got high immigration? That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I always talk about our birth rate as being the massive issue, right? I also think, look, the birth rate is definitely a part of what you just said, but I also think there's this social media wave camp that has come through since the early 2000s, where now people are like, well, I don't need to have kids till I'm 40, or I don't need to have kids at all. Like we have idiots online coming out saying, I don't need to have kids because climate change is going to kill us by 20, 30 or 40. Like
look,
these guys,
I don't know how. Look, you're right. There's a small percentage of people that think like that. Personally, I think that that's the minority. I think most people will still have kids eventually. There's another former senator. Well, senator, he's still a senator, who I think was running that line, but he's had a kid. I won't name his name, but look, that's true, but I think the debt's the big killer.
Yeah,
slowing people down.
Yeah, and it's only seemed to be getting worse and worse, right? Like I've just had my, and everyone knows on my podcast, I've got a 13-week-old at home.
Yeah, congratulations.
Plan to have, I want to breed an army of these little warriors, coming into the world of being a dad's great. And I heard
better too.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I heard Tucker Carlson probably about a year ago. It would have been maybe a few months before me and my wife got pregnant. And I heard Tucker Carlson come out and say, "Have kids, right? Don't worry about anything because you work it out. If there's someone relying on you to survive, you will work it out."
Yeah.
But I feel like we're getting into a spot in Australia where like that, you'll work it out. Like people can't even work out their own life at the moment because their energy bills are through the roof. Our country's in mass debt. I think we're actually in a cost of government crisis, not a cost of living crisis.
Yeah,
and everything seems to be unaffordable. So many people have got this financial pressure on them, which then goes back to like mental health issues and then all these other stuff that comes along with it. So like, how would you, like if you took over tomorrow and like one day in control, how would you turn it around to make sure that this cost of living or cost of government crisis, like I like to call it, actually comes down? Because, Albanese comes out and does something like, 5% deposit on homes. Like, that just puts
that's stupid.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. That just put house.
But not that I want to be fair to Albanese, but that's been happening since 1985 as well. That was that's a capital control. Mm-hmm. So in the old days, you might have to put down a 50% deposit, right? In the old days, so when I worked at the Bank of Queensland as a Treasury accountant, every $1 million we lent out, 60% of that was from overseas, right? In the old days, all the Bank of Queensland could lend out was $400,000. And that $400,000 came from the savings of our seniors who'd retired, right? So that forced house prices to be linked to the earnings of the older generation. And it was actually a virtuous cycle because the interest you'd pay go back to the older generation to pay for their retirement so they wouldn't go on the pension, rather than you're paying 60% of it offshore as you are today on interest to foreign banks who, by the way, don't have to pay tax on it. Yeah.
So you would... what you would do to get this cost of living crisis down is obviously just tax these foreign... or not allow
So we've got two key policies. One is to lift the tax, withholding tax on profits sent offshore. But the other thing we have to do is we have to deal with our inflation and supply side problem, right? So yet again, 1985, a bloke by the name of John Button, he was a Victorian senator, introduced the Button Plan that basically abolished all tariffs for manufacturing, and we let our manufacturing sector go offshore. Now, here we are 40 years later. Now, this is a significant year because it's 40 years from 1985. So that generation that got started work prior to 1985, most of them are on the tools. More of them are on the tools that went to university, right? Because what complements the Button Plan was the Dawkins Plan in 1990. You're too young to remember all this, where basically the government had turned around and said we're going to subsidise people to go to university. So now we've got, instead of having most of the generation getting an apprenticeship, getting on the tools, and by the time they're 22, finishing their apprenticeship and having a bit of money for a house deposit, they're now basically going all the way through to university
and into uni debt,
coming out broken, brainwashed, right? But what I do, the first
I like
thing
how you mentioned brainwashed.
Yeah. Okay. So so when people ask me why I ran for politics, I say I want to make sure our children get the same opportunities as our forefathers gave to us. And the great thing about being a father is you will now come to appreciate your parents 10 times more than you ever did.
Definitely.
Because you're going to be going, geez, my parents went through this. And I didn't, and you'll look back and think I had no idea. And from now on in, you'll now lie awake thinking about your kids and not yourself. It's a great feeling. It gives you a sense of purpose, right? Like
100%.
That's why I'm on the road. I'm almost been 2 weeks away.
How many kids do you have?
3.
Yep.
Yeah. So 13, 11, and 8. But it's the gratitude that I have towards our forefathers that makes me want to make, and the opportunities they gave to us is what is why I ran for politics, right? And I want to make sure our children get the same opportunities as our forefathers gave to us. But what do we do? So there is actually a template for what we do, because this has all been done before. We've been in this trouble before many times, but the first time we were in deep doo-doo was in around 1810. So the first 17 years of the colony, modern Australia, we relied on foreign currency. And you know how I talked before about all wars are currency wars? Okay, this will help you understand. First 17 years of the colony, they relied on foreign currency. Drought in 1805, so that currency got repatriated. They started bartering in rum, and that ended up in the Rum Rebellion, which literally finished tits up. The colony nearly didn't make it. So a bloke by the name of Lachlan Macquarie came here. He introduced the holy dollar, which was at the time the Spanish bloom. It was the reserve currency of the world. Then he punched a hole in it, and he used that to fund the construction of the Sydney hospitals and the Sydney barracks and most of the sandstone buildings you see in Macquarie Street today. Right? So the key to currency is this. Currency is equity. So if you know what a balance sheet looks like, on the left-hand side you've got an asset. That is, from a sovereign point of view, that is our 7 million square kilometres that we have title over. Right? Now, the key point here is we have title over it. So on the other side of the balance sheet, you've got this thing called debt, and you've got this other thing called equity. So if I say I've got a tractor and you're going to audit me, you know that you've got to go out to the farm and look for a tractor and look for the price I bought the tractor. You know what debt is? It's a mortgage. Yep. Do you know what equity is? It's title.
Yeah, okay.
Right? Where'd that come from? And what you should know this better than anyone, where's that title come from?
What do you mean?
Well, the title over 7 million square kilometres, it just doesn't happen like that.
We had to come and take it.
Well, you had to build it.
Yeah.
Okay, and you got to defend it.
Yeah.
So when you joined the military, you're signing up to defend our equity.
Ownership.
Yeah. Exactly right. But you know that, all currencies, we just had that quick conversation before about the wars, is always got to be defended by the military. Because the moment you get the option to use someone else's currency, so you go back to the American War of Independence, that was basically stemmed from the 1763 Currency Act in the colonies, right? So the initial US colonies, they printed their own currency around the 1750s. This is when paper currencies came in. It was called continental script. 1763, the British said to them, you can't use continental script, you have to use British pounds. And of course, Benjamin Franklin and Washington, very intelligent people, the founding fathers of the states. Of course, if you can't use your own currency, you got to borrow it.
I thought that war started because England came in and said they want to do a 2 or 5% tax on
there was no tax. Yeah, there was no taxation without representation as well. But there was also the currency wars. It suits them not to talk about the currency wars because they don't want to bring attention to it, right? But if you can't use your own currency, it means you've got to borrow someone else's, and it means you've got to pay interest on it, right? And that's what Keating did in 1985, right? He's now said we're no longer going to use our own currency. We're going to borrow someone else, and we're going to pay interest on it. Now, Lachlan Macquarie, when he issued that holy dollar, he basically said we have to have our own equity in this country. He had a military to defend the colony, which you need a military to defend the currency, and that's what So that's what we need to do if we want to get out of this. And what I mean by that is that we have to take back control of issuing controlling the volume of credit in the system. Now, another word for that is printing money.
Yeah.
Right now, we've been taught that it is foolish for governments to print money. Now, half of that's half true. If we print and spend and increase demand, that's bad. But if we print and build and increase supply, that's good.
Yep.
Right? So it's just like BHP. No one says to BHP if they wanted to expand the uranium mine down here in South Australia and they had to issue new shares. No neoliberal is going to say, well, BHP can't issue new shares out of thin air, are they? Right? So why can't governments issue new infrastructure bonds? Right? So what we're going to do, people first, is issue one new share and call it untapped wealth. We're going to start an infrastructure bank in Canberra, and we're going to issue infrastructure bonds to the state government on 7 sovereign assets: dams, power stations, tunnels, railway lines, ports, airports, and telecommunications.
And obviously, you'll print that money to fund them projects.
Well, don't use the word print money. We're going to issue infrastructure bonds, right? And the thing is, the state government has to pay that infrastructure bond off over 50 years. But here's the rub. Here's the beautiful thing about it. If we build a dam today for $1 billion, we have to go and borrow that money offshore because no one controls our volume of credit here anymore. The RBA won't do it. They've told me that in estimates, right? That means the first $1 billion in wealth we make from that dam, we've got to repay offshore. And then another 25 years interest at 4%, it's another $1 billion we've got to repay offshore, right? So, yet again, people say you can't print money out of thin air. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to tap the wealth that comes out of the thin air, which is the rain, the soil, the sunlight, okay? And as the words of our national anthem says, wealth for toil. So you combine the toil with those three ingredients. You get dams, you get power stations, you drop a bull in a paddock with 20 cows, you come back a year later, you've got 20 calves. Every year, Mother Nature is giving us recurring revenue. But what Keating did when he lifted capital controls in 85, he's allowed those profits to go offshore as interest, just like Pfizer did with the royalties, instead of keeping it here as earnings. So what we should be doing, that infrastructure bank will force the state governments to pay the interest back to the infrastructure bank here, and then the infrastructure bank pays dividends back to the Australian government, hence the Australian people. What a bit in that, I know, but that's really, really important.
Yeah, so, if it sounds like a pretty good plan to me, so why doesn't the Australian government just adopt that over on FIS right at the moment? If it's especially if it's going to, bring jobs back to Australia, if it's going to definitely benefit communities, and we can use our natural resources or or Mother Nature. Like, why are we doing this or why aren't we doing this? And because to me, it just seems like we're selling everything off overseas, or we're getting China or India or to whatever to do all our stuff. Is there a lot of influence from those coming into the parties?
No, the answer why we do it is that we were brainwashed in the 80s. So I was born in 1970. I did went to high school, did a commerce degree in the 1980s. We've had it jammed into us that you can't trust governments to print money out of thin air. Right now, yet again, that's a nuanced statement, because if you're building with it and creating wealth out of thin air and then repaying, the state government's repaying that through retained earnings, you're converting that debt into equity, right? So you are reducing the volume of credit, but what you're doing is you're building up your equity in the balance sheet, right? But I've had 13 nights in a row out, and I asked people, how many people in the room believe that an extra 100 parts per million of CO2 has increased the atmosphere by a degree? And they all go, no, we don't, we're not brainwashed. And then I'll say to them, how many of you believe you can't print money out of thin air? And they all put their hand up, right? Because they've heard this expression repeated, ad nauseum as they've grown up, right? But what they don't realise is money is a form of credit. Now, there's two types of credit, debt and equity. And as I said to you before, you yourself have been involved. Well, technically, we can have a debate whether or not Afghanistan did or not. But, your role when you signed up to Defend Australia was to protect our equity. Yeah. Right? And yet you have idiots like Keating and blowhard neoliberals who'll then say, oh, we should have foreign debt. We've always had foreign investment. Foreign investment is taking away the title that was built and fought for by our forefathers. That is treason, right? Like that stuff. But the sad thing is no one understands the finance side of it. Forget the economic side of it. I hate economists. They're like the climate change scientists of the finance world. It's all theories and models, not the real stuff, right?
Ian Plimler called them failed mathematicians.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, failed mathematicians. Well, pretty much economists are as well, except they're in the finance space, not the science space, right? But remember so as accountants, we have to deal with real things, and we have to audit things, and we have to go, does this thing really exist? And that's the thing. So you ask yourself, what's equity? That is control. So on a balance sheet, you've got your asset, here's our 7 million square kilometres, and plus that recurring wealth that falls out of the sky every year. You need to ask yourself, who controls it? If it's debt, it's private banks. If it's equity, it's the people. It's that simple. And that's what we've got to do, is get this in. But we're going to do more than that. So we've got the infrastructure bank over here. And then the other thing we want to bring back is a public bank, right? Because the banks are closing down branches in the regions. That means we're going to lose access to cash. Small business can't, bank their takings overnight. Older people are going to be, getting scammed, you're being forced, all that stuff. We want to keep our branches open. So we want to bring back an old, like what the Commonwealth Bank used to be. So it used to be publicly owned. That's going to make money as well. And then the money from the savings bank and the development, the infrastructure bank is going to go into a development bank, which will then lend back to the state governments on schools and hospitals or councils on sewages, which stops them from having to borrow from private banks as well. Okay, and what we're doing in all of that is taking out the cost of paying interest on our own currency, right? Because that currency is our own equity. It's absolutely absurd that we pay interest. Remember that 1763 Currency Act? Franklin and Washington and these guys were like, we're not paying you interest to use British pounds here in America.
Yeah.
It's our country. We'll use our own currency, thanks very much.
Yep.
And this is the problem, right? So all Keating did when he borrowed that money. So the true value of an asset's the net present value of future income streams, right? So if you buy a business, right, for $1 million, and you say you buy it on a PE of 4 times earnings, you want it to make $250,000 a year for the next 4 years so you can pay it off, right?
Yeah.
So that's how you value the asset. But when they lifted capital controls, all of that responsible lending just went out the door. Yeah.
Jesus.
And one of those things was, so you've got qualitative easing now, which is where the banks, the RBA, yet again, did you elect the RBA?
Definitely not.
No. Yet again, we don't live in a democracy, right?
Unelected bureaucrats.
Unelected. Well, except these guys have the most power of all. They can control the price of money, which controls the price of your mortgage, right? So they use qualitative easing, which basically controls demand.
Yeah,
right?
so increasing inflation, increasing, what do you call it?
So demand...
Interest rates.
Yeah, so demand is a relative figure, right? You've got demand and you've got supply. So after they stupidly lowered interest rates to 0.1% in COVID, which smashed, lifted demand right up, right? And that was basically because they also printed... So the one time...
Did they? So this is one thing I read.
Yeah.
The M2 money supply, they increased that by 60% or something like that?
Well, they basically went and bought $300 billion of bonds.
Yeah.
And so the one time that we actually decided to, impact the volume of credit, the RBA actually stepped in and did something with the volume of credit. They did the wrong thing, which they printed $300 billion and then paid people to stay at home and get brainwashed by the premiers, right? Instead of actually, if they'd have built that, used that $300 billion to buy back infrastructure that we privatised in the 90s, that would have been a great move because we could have got all our infrastructure back, right?
Yeah. But we all stayed at home for a cold.
Yeah, exactly. And so now we've got $1 trillion in debt, and it's going to take our kids generations if they're lucky to pay it off. And they're only going to be paid off if we then reverse the button plan, where we start getting more of our younger generation back on the tools. And that's another. And you can advise me on this. We want to bring back and expand the military apprenticeship scheme.
Yeah. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, and expand the engineering corps, both a civil engineering corps and an electrical mechanical engineering corps to build power stations and roads.
Yeah. I would love to see it, especially around the energy. Getting young males and females into the energy sector via the military is a great way, because they go in and they do a 4-year apprenticeship, and then they have to give 4 years back to the military. So that's like them doing their apprenticeship, but at a higher pay. Then they have to give that time back to the military. But I just, and at the moment as well, I see so many young people turning away from service, both in the frontline services and also military as well. It seems to be, it's a damn shame what's happening.
It is. And if we got, we expanded that military apprenticeship scheme and the military engineering corps, you could say when you finished your service, go into the military engineering corps and help build roads and power stations. You feel like you're giving back. I mean, they say that our greatest general, John Monash, I don't know if this is true or not, but it's a good story, he never fired a bullet in battle.
No, but I'm probably almost confident that he would never have done that.
But he was a brilliant engineer who, through his strategy in World War I, helped win the war. But of course, he built bridges in Victoria before World War I, and he set up the Victorian Electricity Commission. Good soldiers build, so that we can have a strong, we want this Australia to be, Fortress Australia, right? And, if not that we want to get in a war, but if we were in a war and we had our roads bombed or our power stations bombed, we can't pick up the phone to some tier 1 Spanish contractor and ask them to come and build it. We've got to get in and build it, right? So we've got to bring all these skills back on shore, as well as our capital, like bring out, get control of our equity. We've got to get control of our human capital, which is, our workforce. Yeah,
and even looking back at, 2,000 years ago, the Romans were so good because they had such a good engineering department.
Yeah.
That's why they were so good, because they had so much behind their military. They they could, I watched a great documentary the other day on Julius Caesar and his tactical moves around Gaul when he took it over. And if he came across a river, it took his engineers like 2 days to be able to build a bridge to get thousands of men across.
Yeah.
And it's not just the fighting your military needs to be good at. It needs to be good at building as well.
Yeah.
And also supplying a nation. Like the one thing that I always get, I don't really get afraid of, because I don't think it'll potentially happen in our generation, but like, what if the world gets so bad that China needs to expand, right? They need to feed their people. There's not enough stuff coming out. So they're going to look to outside sources.
Yeah.
Australia, natural resource.
Absolutely.
Natural resources.
Yeah.
Like if they came here and they tried to do anything to us, America's a long ditch across the pond.
Yep.
We don't have much to defend ourselves. We have a few Yanks up at Darwin base, only about 3,000 of them. But if China wants to unleash their full force and come down, our military needs to be able to rebuild, at the drop of a hat, like you were saying. Like if they bomb power stations, they bomb roads, they bomb airports, we need to be able to rebuild. Yeah. And right now, it just seems like every single contractor coming in, it's all overseas work.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
and they can underprice because of that taxation structure.
Yeah.
Because they send all the fees back to head office and get the deduction here and pay no tax here. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's just, and I mean, we can go on to energy. It's our taxation system, it's our monetary system, it's our energy system now. We've shut down our locally homegrown coal sources, gas sources,
it's
importing foreign-made renewables.
Especially having Ian Plimner on last week, hearing him talk about, because I was a bit of a TV watcher. Used to believe what the TV told you, but right, this is pre-COVID. When COVID hit, I'm like, this is a scam. These guys are absolutely having us. And one of the things that I've always thought is like, yes, the climate, we need to make sure that we are doing our part. And then you really look into it, it's like we're like 1% of global emissions. And then I have that conversation with Ian last week, like CO2 isn't bad.
Yeah, no, it's photosynthesis. The most renewable energy source in the world is photosynthesis.
CO2 isn't bad for us.
Carbon dioxide, H2O, and oxygen.
Yeah, we should be burning more. We should be putting more CO2 in the atmosphere. And it's like they've just manipulated this, and they've done it through schools and universities, and they've really played on the guilt and morals of people as well. It's like, if you don't speak pro-climate, then you're a climate denier, you're anti-human, you're anti-earth, all this sort of stuff, and they really prey on that. And then they try to shut you down. What happened to my episode last week? They demonetize anything where you get an actual professor on in geology, someone that studied rocks, for the last couple 100 million years and thousands of years ago, and you're just like, well, the climate actually cycles. It doesn't matter how much CO2 we're putting into the atmosphere, especially when humans are like 4 to 5% of CO2 naturally, right? So like, I think
you don't even need to be like a scientist
to know that.
Do Newton's laws of physics at school?
And you've
heard the Newton's third law of motion is basically for every action there's an equal and opposite
reaction.
reaction.
I know that.
So basically, their theory is that an extra, the climate alarmists
the extra 37 billion tons of CO2 that we're putting into the atmosphere.
No, don't use that. So just go, they're arguing extra 100 parts per million. 100 parts per million is 1 part per 10,000. Yep, so they're saying an extra 1 molecule of CO2 can heat up 10,000 surrounding N2 O2 molecules by 1 degree. Now, CO2 is 1.5 times heavier, so it's only got to be, let's just assume it's the same size. So in order for 1 molecule to give 10,000 other molecules 1 degree heat each or energy, right, it's got to be 10,000 degrees, right? It can't do that, right? Like if you're 10,000, the temperature of the sun's 5,700 degrees, right? So, I mean, CO2 is 1.5 times heavier, so it's only got to be 6,600 degrees, but that's still hotter than the sun. Yeah. Right? The heat inside an internal combustion engine of a rocket that goes to the moon is 3,300 degrees. So it actually defies the laws. And gases are bad conductors of heat. Yeah. Right? But when they say heat is trapped, yet again, this is another one of these statements, right? Heat is a measure of mean molecular momentum. So the hotter the atmosphere is the temperature is just a measure of how fast molecules move. The hotter it gets, the faster molecules move, right? So it's a measurement. If I said, I'm going to trap 100 kilometres, right? If you're travelling 100 kilometres, it's not the speed that gets trapped, it's the vehicle. Yeah. Right? But so the description of how they're describing it, you can't trap heat. Heat's a measure of, energy, right? Energy is motion. So even the terms, and like the greenhouse gas effect, a greenhouse is a solid, a gas is a gas, right? Gases and solids, you're taught in grade A to have different properties. It's just, that stuff, like there's so many angles you can just destroy it, destroy that argument. That's why they shut you down, and name call, because they actually don't want to have a debate, because you don't have to be. It doesn't take that long to just disprove the whole lot of it.
Yeah, I'm going to reach out to Chris Bowen and try and get him in here. I know he won't come on. I know he'll never ever come on.
Yeah, but it's worth it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. But it's too exposing for him, right? Because what I would open with is if you tell us that coal and gas is killing the planet, and you tell us that we can't use it here for cheap, reliable power, but you ship it all off to China and India to burn.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that was one of my first things when I started looking into this stuff a few months ago. Just the hypocrisy of the government saying we can do one thing, but then we're doing another thing because we're profiting off it, right? Sending it overseas. Big business loves it. China loves it. India loves it. But for them to tell us that we have to shut down coal and gas here, which is a cheap, reliable source of power, that's when I started asking questions. And then I went into the question of the CO2 debate, and I didn't realize until I had Ian on the podcast last week, like the CO2 debate of CO2 rising and falling. I don't need to debate that. I need to be debating CO2 is good for the atmosphere. There is no issues there. Yeah. It doesn't matter how much we burn. He even said that if you burn every bit of coal and gas on the planet, we would still never get to levels that would be toxic or deadly to humans or any bit of plant life on it.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that I've almost been sucked into the climate stuff as well, where I'm debating CO2 levels, saying that we're only a certain amount of CO2, but realistically it's like no, CO2 isn't bad for the planet. Like what we're doing doesn't really matter, especially when we're only 30 billion tons, and then you have a whole bunch of trees suck up CO2, plant fluid loves CO2.
Well, so after the bushfires in 2020, there was an article in the ABC that said there was a phytoplankton bloom in the Southern Ocean because of all that smoke that got swept out to sea, and then the phytoplankton in the ocean sucked it all, just chewed it up, right? It's like when it rains and you have grass grow faster, like when the CO2 dropped into the ocean faster, the phytoplankton just exploded. And here's the thing, they don't count phytoplankton in their net zero models.
Of course they don't.
Right, and another thing, I don't know if you saw this, I asked in estimates, if I could have a look at the model by which they calculated net zero.
They didn't let you have it?
Well, Larry Marshall, I think he was feeding it to me, he said, well, which model do you want? There's 40 different models. So yet again, you can't even agree on the way in which you're going to measure this stuff. Why should we trust you at all?
Yeah, Ian said as well last week, he always, whenever he hears the word models, he goes to the fridge and gets a beer out.
Yeah.
Because he just laughs at it. And he said, with the models, he goes, yeah, it's okay to look forward, but look back. Show me how you're right. So if you've got a model that is dragged out from 2000 to 2040, let's look back and see how correct you are.
Yeah.
Right? Let's not keep looking forward, because you're wrong every single time, which he's claiming they are.
Yeah.
He's like, you can't keep going off these models when in the past you've been wrong every single time on it.
Yeah, it's all based on assumptions.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, and then he comes back and he goes, the failed mathematicians. That's what client scientists are.
Yeah, and experimenters. So basically, if you want to prove something, you've got to do repeat observations, and that's and they're not doing that. They're just making dodgy assumptions, and
And then you look back, who's paying these guys? The green billionaires.
Taxpayers paying them.
Yeah, but
the green billionaires are sucking the taxpayers dry.
Yeah, do you know a guy named Mike Cannon-Brookes?
Yeah, I know. I don't know him, but I know who he is.
Yeah. Did you hear what he did with AGL?
Yeah, didn't he buy it or try to buy it?
Yeah, so he tried to buy the entire thing back in 2021. wasn't allowed to do it. So then he bought a 13% stake in it, which was the highest stake. Came in, he did a whole review of the board, sacked anyone that was pro coal.
Yeah.
Brought all his green mates in. They did an overhaul of the board. They shut down all their coal facilities early. Yeah. And then they ran the green infrastructure from there.
Yeah.
And that's why, and then when Albanese comes out, I think it was in Bendigo or Ballarat. Yeah. And he comes out and says, well, the market actually demands that we are going to the green energy. It's like, well, no, your mate bought the market out and he pushed it to go to green energy. So it's not the market, it's your green billionaire mates that bought out AGL. They closed down coal and now we're going green. So when Albanese comes out and says, oh, it's the market, well, no. The market is very closely tied to labour.
Yeah. Well, but here's the thing. Our markets are China, Japan, India, and Korea. They're not, none of them are leaning on us to go to net zero. It's only Europe and the moderates or the left side of politics. Even Trump now is slagging off renewables.
Oh, they completely pop smoke on it.
The only one that could have leaned on us in the past, say the US, like even they're not supporting net zero. So there is no reason to keep it. But unfortunately, look, we're sitting at 94 seats. Labor's sitting on 94 seats, and we haven't won the climate. We haven't won the renewable energy argument. Unfortunately, I mean that's not to say we've got to stop, but what I'm saying is we're not winning it, and so we've got we've got issues.
You just mentioned there that they're sitting on 94 seats. This is the question that I always get asked as well. They're sitting on 94 seats with like 32% or 35% of the vote. This voting system that we have as well, it just seems to be really, really hard to understand, right? Like,
well, I don't think. Okay, so they might be sitting on 32, 34, but the Teal's got over 1 million votes.
Yeah, okay.
So when I started my trip, I drove down to New South Wales North Coast and stopped at Kempsey, and that seat's in a town's in a seat called Cowper, which is held by the National Party. The Teal in that seat got a smidgen under 30% of the primary vote, and I think the Labor person got 12. So most of that Teal vote was once upon a time Labor votes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that Labor vote for a start isn't as low as you think.
Okay.
Right, so, but it's not, the 34% primary vote, right, add the Greens of 12% and add the Teals of 8%, and that gets you to your 54.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's why, so that's called first past the post. Now, technically, Albanese could get 51% of the vote and get 150 seats in Parliament. If he got 51% of the vote in every seat in Australia, he could have all the seats, right? In Queensland, the LNP in Queensland federally traditionally gets around 50 to 55% of the vote. They've held 70% of the Conservative seats, right? Because this is the problem with two past the post, is that if it's replicated in every seat, you only have to win the majority in that seat, right? But that's why the Senate is structured differently. It's based on proportional voting. Mm-hmm. So, and it's basic for every 14% you get a senator.
Yeah.
Okay. So and the founding fathers designed that deliberately. That was undermined in 2016 when the Liberal Party got rid of group voting tickets in the Senate. That's why you got above the line voting. They don't need that anymore. You may as well just vote 1 to 6 below the line. You don't need the whole above the line voting. But I would argue that it was a better system when you had above the line voting, so that you could allocate all your preferences out.
Yeah. I was looking because there's an election coming up in South Australia.
Yeah.
And you can actually tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but I seen the Liberal Party came out the other day under Vincent Tarzia. He said we got 50 cent bus fares.
Yeah.
That's how we're going to tackle, this next election.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, my guys, surely we can come up with something better. And I was just doing a bit of reading before. South Australia exports. And I just said anything coming out of the ground, right? So that's like our wine industry.
Yeah. Uranium.
Yeah, uranium. Big ticket uranium items. I was talking to a mate about that the other day. He worked up at a mine. And those uranium, there's like a confidential agreements coming out of there. And he said that's connected back to the Republican Party. And part of that uranium goes back to rearming the US nuclear arsenal.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah. He said you only got to do a bit of research on it and know who the families are behind those some of those contracts.
Yeah.
And anyway, I think we do something like all of our natural resources, $18 billion or something.
Yeah.
And I quickly did some calculations and I said, just give me a amount we have to tax. And I'm not talking when it leaves state borders. I'm talking when it leaves Australia.
Yeah.
What percent do we have to do a tax export to give South Australians free power?
Yeah.
Because I think we pay around 1.5 billion worth of power per year, and just Australian households.
Yeah.
That's not business or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then I think we only needed to do a 7 or 8% tax on those exports when they leave the country to the buyer, right?
Yeah.
So like talking potentially China and all these places, America. Yeah. And then with that, we'll cover South Australians' household power bills.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, I'm like, what is holding back a party to doing that and running that in as their next election is like the big part, like free.
Well, that is our policy. That's that infrastructure bank policy. And by the way, you really are young, aren't you?
Yeah.
Because what you just said is what used to happen here in Australia.
Really?
Yeah, still happens in Queensland.
So why did it stop?
Well, because the neoliberals got in charge and said we have to privatise everything. We haven't privatised our coal-powered fire stations in Queensland. So there's 2 Kogan Creek.
So it's still government run.
Yep, still government. No, yeah, government owned.
Owned, yeah.
But they sit on top of coal beds that are still owned by the people. So you don't have to buy the coal. You just have to dig it up and burn it. We own it.
Yeah.
So you take under Joe Bjelke-Petersen, who's widely disparaged as being corrupt, but when in his government he opened up the Bowen Basin, which had heaps of coal, right? When that coal got exported, so the state government would collect royalties on the coal, freight charges on the train lines, which used to fund the trains in the city. So Queensland Rail was privatised in 2009. The freight train part, that used to cross-subsidise the trains in the city, right? So if it's your Olympic Dam, I mean, uranium's, I don't think a bulk commodity, I think it's smaller. But certainly in Queensland, you don't need to pay for the trains because you can fund it yourself from the freight trains. And then likewise with the ships coming into port, the state government would also charge them. So you had 3 forms of recurring revenue. And then he went and did it all over again in a place called Weipa, which is heaps of bauxite. And he was really clever, and his treasurer was really clever. They said you can't export to Comalco, who used to run it. Comalco used to be an Australian-owned company. It's now owned by Rio, that's half-listed in the UK. Leo Helsher said you can't export bauxite. So what if you can't export bauxite? What do you got to do to it?
Well, you got to burn it here, right?
You got to refine it, right? Into alumina and aluminium, which gave us the great Queensland town of Gladstone. Okay, so from all of that value add, and this is why we want the infrastructure bank, because that infrastructure can pay for the recurring costs of schools and hospitals. So you don't have to, by all means, we need to stick withholding taxes on profits sent offshore, but a well-run state government can just about fund itself, right, through running its infrastructure. You take, so in Brisbane, we've got 2 million people paying $6 a toll today. In 100 years' time, there'll be 5 million people paying $70 a toll, right? Same for, we sold the Port of Brisbane, and a similar thing probably happened here. We sold our Port of Brisbane for 5 times earnings, 6 times earnings, forestry plantations for 5 times earnings. We sold our state government insurance office for next to nothing. Now 50% of all the insurance we pay in this country is comprised of reinsurance we pay offshore. So and that's one of our other policies, is we want to start a national government insurance office. So we just reinsure ourselves, and including private insurance companies. That can halve the cost of insurance, and then if we do that, we bring more people back in the insurance pool. So you don't need to tax, I mean, we do want some taxes on profits sent offshore by all means, but if you ran your country properly with our amount of natural wealth, you could basically generate enough recurring revenue from indirect taxes and royalties to pay for government. I mean, before 1913 in the States, coming back to when... So there was a big, how climate change is the battle today. In the 19th century in the United States, monetary policy was a massive battle, right? And now that battle was lost in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was set up. But prior to and then they had to bring in an income tax at the federal level. And you might hear some people say, federal income tax charged by the federal government in the US is illegal or unconstitutional. That's because initially the federal government didn't charge income tax in the States. They relied on stamp duty and tariffs, right? And they protected their industry, and they basically, all they did was had a transaction tax, which is what stamp duty is. It's just, so yet again, when Howard brought in the GST in 2000, instead of getting rid of payroll tax on companies that employ people to do things, they got rid of stamp duty on share trading, which of today, so 60% of our market today is traded by foreigners with algorithms on bots. And then if they make a capital gain, how much tax do you think they pay?
Not much.
Zero.
Not much.
Because, zero.
Yeah.
So basically, if you buy an investment property or you make a capital gain or on your farm or your business, you got to pay tax. Foreigners don't have to. It's just another rip in the Tax Act, 855, 1997 Act. Yeah.
Imagine if you took an Australian from 1950 and you plonked them to them now and you told them how much tax they're paying and stuff like that. I mean, people would almost riot, right? This is what they do. I think this is what they've done over time. It's like that, the boiling frog analogy.
Yeah.
This is what happened, and then they just slowly bring things in. And I'm seeing it happening now as well with like even speech laws, and stuff like this. Like they don't want you talking about climate change. They don't want you talking about digital ID. They don't want you talking about immigration, all this sort of stuff coming through. I mean, I know when one of my posts is being suppressed online, and it's just some weird stuff happens. Like I won't be able to get, if I know that a post, because whenever I post, I generally have 1,000 likes within like three or 4 minutes.
Yep.
and
Yep.
it'll be at 10,000 views.
Yeah.
If I post in there and if I use certain words,
Yeah.
I talk climate change.
Yeah.
Or if I talk immigration.
Yeah.
Or if I use like if I call Albanese a moron or something like
Yeah.
that, that would be like 100 in a couple of minutes, and it'll be at like 1,000 views.
Yeah.
But then the algorithm kicks in from there, and I have thousands of sends, so it generally catches up. But I always know there's someone watching somewhere, and something happens in the algorithm when I say certain words in my reels.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And I just think there's a massive battle at the moment with like the information battle we're in right now, like the climate stuff.
Yeah.
What was that Senate inquiry that came through the other day, run by the Greens or Labor?
Yeah, and didn't they have a crack at one of them? QET have a crack at Matt Canavan for spreading dangerous. He's been dangerous, and
man, I get people that send me death threats about climate change because people actually think, and they're just from bogus accounts, right? Someone will bring it up, like one follower blanks or whatever, and they tell me some pretty serious stuff because they actually think that if I speak up against this stuff, I might change the narrative. Someone like yourself might get into office. We might start burning coal and gas, and by doing that, they see me as a massive threat, and they think that I need to die.
Yeah.
That's how serious it is. It's like a Charlie Kirk situation, but in Australia online. Like people, I get this stuff all the time. I did a reel about it today. Anthony Albanese came out whinging about how we got a death threat from someone in far north Queensland, and everyone needs to tone down their language.
Like, he's right about that. I mean, people do get worked up too much on social media.
He definitely is, but like he needs to go to his own politicians, like Jim Chalmers calling everyone crackpots and cookers.
He's called me a cooker, Albanese.
This is where it starts though, because if politicians use this dehumanising language, it teaches the people to do that, and then it looks at figures like you and me. They're like, well, they're not human, so I can say what I want to him online, so I can come in him online, I can send death threats online. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, with Albo, it's like, mate, you need to clean your own closet before you tell the rest of the population to calm down language. Now look, definitely, I hate getting death threats are the worst thing, right? That's like why I don't look at comments. That's why I don't open my message requests anymore. Yeah. They sometimes come through in emails, and I just report it to the police and stuff like that. So everything needs to calm down. But I also think it's like, I don't know. It's just my conspiracy.
This is the problem with social media, and it's a problem. I've been talking about this on our trip. This is why we want to go back to grassroots campaigning and start talking to people face to face out in the community.
I love that.
Yeah, and that's why we need an active membership base. That's why I started People First, because there isn't actually a party that's actually active with a membership that actually gets to have a say in who they pre-select to go to Parliament. The problem now, Labor Party's always been top-down, command and control. But the coalition has traditionally allowed pre-selections to take place, and anyone could join the party, and then you're eligible to put your hand up for pre-selection or a vote on that pre-selection. And that's really, really important, because when politicians, say for example, sign up to net zero, and then they backflip voting 2 years later, like Scott Morrison did, you need a chance to be able to go to the pre-selection and say, you said 2 years ago you weren't signing up to net zero, and you did. We're going to vote you out. And the reason why it has to happen within the party system is because traditionally you've had 60 safe Labor seats, 60 safe coalition seats. So generally those seats aren't decided on the day of the election. They're decided in the room on a pre-selection day, right? But the moment, and this is what's happening in the Liberal Party, and we see this particularly bad in New South Wales, whereby they're just shoehorning incumbent MPs in their spots. So we saw it with Susan Ley and Alex Hawke in 2022, and I think it happened again in 2025. These guys aren't even going back to their own pre-selection. So that's why we need an active grassroots membership base to basically hold the politicians to account within safe seats, because it's generally your ministers come from safe seats. They're the ones that make the decision. So I was only ever a backbencher. Alex Antic, he's a backbencher. Matt Canavan's a backbencher. But the ones who are making the decisions behind closed doors often come from the safe seats. And the reason why they're completely detached is that they know they don't have to face their own membership within the party.
Right.
So that's why we want to build up our members to actually have a proper grassroots membership. But not only that, they're all going to have a say on policy. And the other thing is, we had that March for Australia a couple of weeks ago. Give or take 10,000 people, about 200,000 people marched across the country. If we got 200,000 people delivering 50 flyers with 5 good policies, a QR code to the party website, contact email address, an invitation to an event, say here in Adelaide or wherever, you could get that out to 10 million people, because that's the way you get around mainstream media, because they only ever talk on the major two, and maybe now the Greens and One Nation, but it's mainly those four. But if we want to get a party to come through the middle, a proper grassroots party that listens to the people and not the big party apparatchiks and the donors that give to the party apparatchiks, that's what we have to do. And the other thing is, say you spent $50 on going to the rally. If 200,000 people put $50 into a party membership that's $10 million a year, you get some serious coin to start taking on the majors. Because they've paid themselves now. You've got to get 4% of the vote to get your money back, right? So because, as you say, their primary vote's slipping down to the low 30s, earlier this year they jacked up the amount of money they get per vote from $3.38 to $5.
What?
So, yeah. So because their reward...
From taxpaying funders.
Yeah, from taxpayers. So that because they're losing members, they're losing donors and sponsors, so they've just said, well, we don't need you anymore. So what they've done here in South Australia is outrageous, right? You can't even take a donation to run in a state election.
I did a reel about this earlier on and got really, really good traction. I just think it's like a two-party monopoly system.
It
right?
is.
The Liberals didn't even come back and try to say... And just a bit of a background on everyone. Peter Malinauskas came out with like a groundbreaking policy saying that we're taking all money out of politics. No one can take any donations now over $5,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I laughed at it because when you start to look behind it, it's like, hold on. The Labor and Liberal Party, they are taxpayer funded, so you get your money
They're
off
getting
the...
$4 million each or something, aren't they?
Yeah. So you get your
level.
get your money off the last election's results.
Yeah.
Off of how many votes you ever get off last election's results. So let's say like Labor Party got 50% of the vote, then they get 50% of the money. Liberal, etc. Blah blah blah. And then over 2 years, the Peter Malinauskas government spent like $140 million on advertising.
That's right.
And it's like a juggernaut gets to spend $140 million on advertising, and if I want to start a grassroots movement, I'm capped at $5,000. Per donation. It's like, come on, guys, it's not fair.
Is it 5,000 per donation? I thought it was 5,000 all up.
I'm not too sure.
Yeah, no, I think it's...
if it's 5,000 all up, that's even worse.
What I was told this morning was you're given 5,000 if you become a candidate, but the registration's 2 or 3, and then you've got to spend the rest on call flights. Like, it's literally... Because we've looked into running here, but then when I looked into it, I just thought it's too hard. We just haven't got the time, and we don't have... like, even if we did have the time, we'd have to find the money. But if you can't receive donations, then, and of course this, as you say, just entrenches the two-party system. So this is where we need to get and the minor parties are desperately lacking organisation and coordination, and that's what I want to do with people first. Is just get branches like we've been going through the eastern states, Victoria and tomorrow night in Adelaide. But we've got it's the people that's got to push back. I mean, it's what happened in 1776, with the American Patriots, right? They basically gave the middle finger to the British establishment and said, no, we'll control our own country, thanks very much. But they had to literally, fight for their country. And we don't have to take up arms, but we need to, And I would do polls in these meetings I've been having where I've asked how many people have been involved in a political party in the past, and it's less than 10%, maybe 1 in 20 people.
Well, that means you're talking to a new generation of people.
Yeah, that's true. But even then, I'd go one step further. How many of you actually go to your school P&F meetings and get involved and talk to your principal? And then if little Johnny was taught the wrong thing at school about, some woke item, have you actually gone to the school and said, I don't want my son taught that or my daughter's taught that? And very few people have done that either. And as I say, well, look, the world's controlled by those who turn up. So that's what we want to focus on. That's what I mean. We know all these issues. Climate change, all this stuff, right? But what are we doing about it? And it's not enough just to talk anymore. We've got to start walking the walk.
Half that issue is the Australian she'll be right attitude. That's half the issue, right? Especially when you gave that example before about teachings in schools. How many people went up to their principal? Like a lot of people just, I don't want to have that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because that's Australians, they don't really like that confrontation like the US might, or people over in Europe might. We're a bit more reserved, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that's half the problem. But one of the things I've noticed over the last 3 months is the amount of people that come up to me, speak to me, and it is like pure frustration.
Yeah,
I can feel frustration oozing out of them.
Yeah,
and it's because their energy bills are high and cost of living.
Yeah,
but it's also like they feel like they're being abandoned by government, right? Like the government's caring about everyone else except them. Yeah, and even the way some of the speech that is happening now, right? It's just like the frustration I'm getting from people, and everyone always tells me they're like, you need to start a party and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't think my voice all my time needs to go to starting a party. I think my voice is so much better on the sidelines, being able to build up my profile and put across like a common sense approach to everyone where we can.
Yeah, but you got to back a party. At some point, you got to back a party.
Yeah, that's what everyone. Yeah, so that's what everyone says.
You don't have to start one. You can pick one that's already existing. We don't need any more. But yeah, a lot of people sit on the fence, and it's like, no. You've got to back a party. We've all got to go into the same party. We've all got to be pulling in the same direction. Depending on what your social media channel sort of vets you, but we got to take. You got to. I hate saying this because I hate telling people what to do, i.e. the vaccine mandates, but. No, and the reason why they're coming back to why everyone's negative, because we're talking a lot about this as well, is that the politicians aren't giving people hope. They're getting bogged down in social media. There's a lot of negativity and whinging and wailing from politicians, and they're all they're doing is throwing, pardon my French, shit at each other, right? The behaviour that goes on in the chamber, absolutely. We see stunts. We're not seeing solutions, and that's what we're pushing. We're saying, look. We want an infrastructure bank. We've got over the horizon vision whereby our children will own the infrastructure that our forefathers gave to us. That is our vision of people first. That infrastructure will generate recurring revenue to pay for the bills. Yeah, we'll still have to pay some taxes, but we want to build up our capital, our assets, so that it can generate heaps of money. We keep it all in this country, and we can afford, we can reduce our debt, and our kids can live without all this anxiety. Because I grew up in the great era in that 70s and 80s. If you ever get the chance, go and look at the 1988 bicentennial celebrations in Sydney Harbour. It was absolutely fantastic. We had so much national pride, not in a arrogant way or anything like that, but we were, and the listeners who are my era, 1970 era, and can remember the 80s, you'll know exactly what I was talking about. And somehow we've lost that over the last 30 years, and we've got to bring that back. But to bring that back, we've got to be able to, show people we've got a solution and give them hope. But there's no substitute for hard work. We've got to take, and what's interesting is I always go back to that Rum Rebellion, and what I love, do you know what the first generation of Australian-born Australians called themselves?
No.
Currency lads and currency lasses.
Oh, yeah?
Because they were so proud of their currency.
Yeah.
Because the other currency in the colony at the time was sterling, right? This is when they had the Poms. If you're born in Aussie, they used to hate the Poms even back then, coming over and, big noting themselves. So the first generation, and there was a judge about 1832 by the name of Burton who said that the Australian-born Australians had a much lower crime rate than immigrants coming in then. So, nothing's changed in that sense, right? But I just find that so inspiring and also disappointing in the sense that our first generation of Australian-born Australians knew more about monetary policy then than we do today. But when you hear those stories, John Monash, the stories and all the sacrifices that have been made by our Australian forefathers, that's where we've got it. We've got to start talking like that again, because all those guys, they came up with solutions. I can remember Menzies in 1939. He stood down as a matter of principle. He was a minister and he stood down. We don't see politicians in a ministry stand down on matters of principle anymore.
Did Hasty do it the other day?
Yeah, Andrew did. Yes, got a lot of time for Andrew.
Yeah,
he's a very good man. Him and Matt Canavan.
Yeah.
Got a lot of time for both of them, and of course Alex. But but that's what we want again. Is we've got to be able to provide the vision, hope, and the know-how, the knowledge, and just
it's interesting what you said before about backing a party. It's like that psychological point of view, right? Like, because whether I like it or not, people actually look to me now for
that's right.
Like they do. They look to me for guidance. Like, what's your opinion on this? What's your opinion on this? They want my opinion on everything, and that's okay. I'm here, and I accept that fact. That's my life. But they do it really, really good in the US. Like they'll parade around and they'll get, like, Donald Trump will stand up to or stand next with like rappers or Joe Rogan. Like they'll all endorse him.
Yeah.
Do you think there's almost a point like that where we need to get to for yourself, wanting to sort of capture a certain amount of vote? Do you think people need to be like a few months before the election, like, I endorse People's First Party? Because that doesn't really happen here with like your celebrity type of Australians where people look to or podcasters
they're
like
much
myself.
more. Yeah,
it doesn't really. They're reserved. They don't really do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
In America, they're big on it.
Well, we don't have the same social media. You're probably quickly becoming, maybe not. I don't want to. Maybe you might be quite a Joe Rogan status yet, but there's
I think
we don't have a
numbers-
lot of Tucker Carlsons and
Yeah.
Joe Rogans here, and you're probably you're getting up there.
Yeah,
with
my
the best of them.
numbers in just Australia based.
Yeah.
A friend of mine did a bit of review on me.
Yeah.
My numbers in regards to Australia with our population and my social media numbers, my podcast numbers, is like the same level as Joe Rogan on
good.
like would get in America.
Yeah.
So
I'd hate to break it to you, Sam, but yeah, but that's the same for me, right? Like I've got 3 young kids, and you know, it was I knew when I made this decision to keep the party going, it was going to come at a big price, right? Because I'm not taking a salary. I'm funding my own trips. All this is I'm paying for by myself. I can afford it at this stage, touch wood. But at the same time, I know I've got the knowledge in tax and finance that the other politicians don't have. I mean, I've seen Frydenberg, I saw Chalmers. I told them what to do, they didn't do it. And the other thing is, I know the way that if we're going to improve the political system in government in this country, we've got to improve the level of accountability and democracy within political parties themselves. Does that make sense?
Are you talking about lobbyists?
Yeah, lobbyists are gone. We paid lobbyists. But here's the thing. A lot of lobbyists, it's a rotating door between lobbyists and then they're often executives in a party as well. We've got to...
What did you just say?
It's a rotating door. Like
So lobbyists are paid executive party.
Well, they're not at the same time. We've had lobbyists up in the LNP. They're no longer lobbyists, but they were on state exec. But when I was in the North Sydney branch, when I lived in Sydney, I had a well-known lobbyist by the name of Michael Photius say to me after a drinks at an FEC meeting at North Sydney Leagues Club, my wife was standing right next to me, and said, "Who wants to become a politician? I can make you become one." And I was gobsmacked that he said that. Yeah. And
These people.
And what they do is Chris Pine, so he's a South Australian. When he stopped being a minister, he went straight into lobbying. You know what I mean? And he's got the defined benefit scheme as well.
Straight into a high-paying job.
Yeah, you know, it's generally your ministers become lobbyists because your ministers have the phone numbers of the bureaucrats. There was an interesting connection that was in the press a year or two ago with Scott Briggs, who was Scott Morrison's Cook FEC chair, but he was also a lobbyist. And there was some dialogue, I'll stand to be corrected on this, between him and Mike Pizzullo. And no one ever picked up on the fact that what was a bureaucrat talking to a lobbyist for. And I wanted to explore that more because often the lobbyists, they don't even go to the ministers. They go straight through to the bureaucracy because the ministers are too stupid to know what to do. So they're told what to do by the bureaucrats. So if you can get to the bureaucrat and tell them what to do, then they can influence. And it's influence, right? So it's not necessarily...
It sounds like it needs to be stopped.
Oh, paid lobbying needs to stop. We've got a policy. Just paid lobbying needs to be stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have volunteer lobbyists. So there's a group called the Isolated Children's Fund. So these are mothers that come down to Canberra once a year. Their children, they live in outback Australia, and they get they get support to send their kids off to boarding school because there's no schools in their local area. They're all volunteers. I don't. Yeah. Or there was another lady.
They're not in it for the money.
They're not in it for the money, right?
Yeah,
so, you know, and then there was another girl whose sister died of cancer, so she was working with the cancer. I forget the name of the cancer organisation, but she was doing it out of love for her sister. Like, that stuff I love doing. You know, you want to help people who are struggling.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, that's okay. I mean, you know, that's where they're just basically volunteers, like, you know, members of a political party are volunteers. And that's what you get. Most members in a political party are volunteers. They're just paid up members that, you know, want to see better. And then what's really annoying is the paid wing, the parliamentary wing, once they get to Canberra, they forget about their own members even. You know, forget about the electors. I mean, it's just, you know, they just turn their back on everyone.
Yeah. It was funny when you say with some of our politicians how they're, I didn't say useless, but, you know, like, I just think to myself sometimes, like, how did these people get there? Like, how did they get people to vote for them in the first place? How did they win pre-selection on this? Like,
well, they start off in university. So most of them, especially in the safe seats, have been yes men.
Yeah.
And they keep, like, I kept my mouth shut. All I did was talk about withholding tax when I was...
And they just take orders.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the moment you stop taking orders, is the case with myself.
See you later.
Yeah, see you later. Yeah, but that's not just the public sector. That's the private sector as well.
Yeah,
I've worked in big corporations. So as I say, like, you know, we want to empower the individual and the families. People First wants to empower the individual and families and stand up against the unrestrained authority of the institutions. So that's big government, but it's also big corporations. Like, I've seen it heaps of times. company executives run a company into the ground and walk away with a $2 million handshake, or if not more. I mean, it's particularly, they're granting themselves options and all this stuff on the stock exchange now. It's just out of control. It's so bad that the number of listings on the ASX is actually declining. That's how corrupt our corporate sector is in Australia. It's bad as well.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of people don't watch the ASX. I do, but it is bad. Big super funds, yet again, $3 trillion in funds under management outside of self-managed super funds. When was the last time you got to vote for the people that managed your money in super? Never. So you've got an RBA, you don't vote for them. You got all these superannuation boards who control if you control $3 trillion in capital, you control what?
Pretty much the
economy.
Yeah.
And industry, right? So now we've got economy and industry driven by ideology, not productivity. They're doing all this, all human resources now running companies, not the bloody operation staff.
Weird stuff.
Yeah, weird stuff. We're not voting on people inside parliamentary parties. You don't get to vote on them. Then the cross-media ownership laws were abolished in about 2018. One Nation supported that, actually. So now we've lost, a lot of regional newspapers. So you're basically a big media, ABC, News Corp, and Fairfax 9. So Channel 7 has a little presence and Channel 10 not much. So that's so centralised now. So Murdoch runs it. He's a puppet. He just does whatever the establishment want him to do. The ABC's left-wing. And Channel 9 and Fairfax, they're probably, they still push, big corporates, but, they're not too bad. But, that's it. So everything is just so centralised today.
Yeah, and it's controlled, and it seems to be controlled by something weird behind the scenes. Even ABC, I think a week or two ago, they ran a piece on me and tried to slander my name a bit. But
was that to do with those rallies?
Yeah. So there was two. It was through because I never went to the rally.
Yeah,
but I did a reel where I called out the Palestinian rally where they marched across the bridge, and I just said, what if we in Australia we did a rally for the $5 billion that we send over in foreign aid, but the 100,000 people that we have homeless.
Yeah,
and then what if we march for Australia first?
Yeah,
and someone wrote a piece about me taken off, and then everyone started talking a whole bunch of stuff. But that, and then I called out this immigration thing the other day, and ABC ran a piece on it as well. I think this is going to start happening a lot more with me. They're going to be running these slander campaigns and stuff like that. But it just seems to be the ABC. It's like this woke left-wing ideology where they push and try to really dampen down. Like they hate Trump. They hate any type of right-leaning politicians. They go after him.
Oh, they went after me for 4 days when I was a Senate candidate.
Yeah.
On the climate change of childcare. So I want to pay childcare directly to the parents. Mm-hmm. So you can basically, there's millions of shift workers in this country that can't access institutionalised childcare, right? You've got to put your kid in a childcare centre to get the childcare. But if you're you're a nurse or a policeman at work, shift work, you can't pick your child up at 6 o'clock at night because you're still on shift, or you can't drop them off. Fly out workers have to pay for childcare when they don't need it. You might have someone working part-time. You might work part-time here and then go and, have to do 3 hours work somewhere else just to top up your salary or whatever. You don't need to pay for 12 hours of childcare, right? So why not make it more flexible? And why not encourage even grandparents looking after your children, right? Because the memory, yet again, the inspiration, I remember my grandparents, right? Or some of them. I found out when I was older that my grandmother lost 3 sons in childbirth, right? Basically the first year of their life. Now, so you just had your first child. You know what it'd be like to lose one.
100%, yeah.
Imagine losing 3 out of 5. And then when mum passed away, I got the letters that granddad wrote to grandma, right? So, but, I just think knowing who your grandparents were and spending time with your parents and, you'll have this time with your child, that stuff is priceless. Yeah. And we don't want Big Brother raising our children. We want the family raising our children. And we want greater flexibility in the workforce. Now, there's nothing wrong with what I just said there, but the ABC will demonise me and call me an old white crusty man for saying that, despite the fact I stayed home for 4 years and raised my kids so my wife could go back to work. But I know exactly where you're coming from, long story short. Yeah.
I've got a just an interesting story. My favourite time with my nana, who's my mum's mum, recently passed away a few years ago. Every single day after school, my auntie used to pick us up because us cousins went to the same school.
Yep.
Pick us up, and then they used to drive them home because she didn't work. The dad worked, but both my parents worked.
Yep. And
then me and my brother got dropped off to my nana's house.
Yeah.
And my nana used to cook us up these awesome ham and cheese toasties.
Yeah.
And she used to, in the summer, she used to play cricket with us out the back.
Yeah.
Until my mum could come home and pick us up.
Yeah.
And it was like just how you're talking then, like having that family involvement, like that's the greatest.
Yeah.
The greatest ever memory that I have, well, of my nana was like, she was 50 or 60. She had 2 young boys come home from school. They were hungry as hell.
Yeah.
So she fed them, and then we're like, well, we need more energy. So she played cricket with us out the back.
Yeah.
And we just used to, we never used to let her bat.
Yeah.
She was always bowling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was just
yeah.
But that's that thing. Like now, I don't think they should be able to do that.
Yeah, and you know the big difference between your grandparents raising, or your parents, your family raising you, and big government raising you? What's big government used to control you?
Well, there's a whole bunch of
fear.
Yeah, and
fear. So that your parents and your grandparents will give you love, and your local, even friends in the community, right?
And also, what are they teaching these kids?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's my worry.
Yeah,
you watch like Netflix come out, and they're pushing this same-sex marriage type stuff, and being like, it's okay to have 2 mums. Like, that's okay, but we shouldn't be pushing that on the kids.
Yeah, it's too young. But just going back to the whole fear element, fear of climate change, fear of COVID. There's always, like that's not the way to raise children. You want to be, as you say, playing cricket. Yeah, and you'll remember that until the day you die, right?
100%.
And I remember talking to my grandma.
I spoke at her funeral, and that's what I mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's my greatest memory of it.
Yeah, and as you get older, and you have, as I said, as you're raising your children, like those bonds will only tighten more. And that's like I didn't get married till I was almost 37. Had my first son at 41, so I'm an old dad. So I had quite a lot of time.
35.
Doing lots of drinking and talking, and as you do, and going out and having fun. But it's given me a sense of purpose as well. And that's like, so I'm not coming to this from some religious point of view or God-bothering point of view or anything like that. I'm coming from this. If I didn't have kids and settle down and get married to a great wife, I'd probably still be hitting the piss and talking shit. And that was fun in my 20s. But, you get to a point in your life where it's like, no, I want more out of my life than just, waking up on the weekends with a hangover. So, yeah.
Having kids has been the greatest accomplishment of my life, and I think I've done some pretty cool stuff in my life.
Yeah,
I've deployed to Afghanistan, done a few cool things in my local footy club and stuff like that. I recently ran from Melbourne to Adelaide.
Yeah,
it was a 1,000k run. I averaged 45k's a day for 23 days. Raised a bunch of money for veterans and first responders.
Yeah,
but the greatest feeling I've ever had was seeing my little girl for the first time.
Yeah,
easily.
Yeah.
So like a lot of people always say to me that they're like, oh, why do you risk talking up in today's society? Well, it's like, well, I've got a couple reasons why. Because my mates that died over in Afghan and my cousin, I know that they'd be rolling in their grave to see the Australia that's happened now.
Yeah, that's right.
So I speak up about that. Second reason I speak up is because like you bring a kid into this world and you're like, well, do I really want to expose her to what potentially might be a really bad Australia in 30 or 40 years?
Yeah, but don't think like that.
Yeah. So, but like that's why I speak up now.
Yeah.
That's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Because like the death threats get to you. Like
but we still live in a great country.
We do.
Like I know a lot of people are down on it, but I'll tell you what, our standard of living and the possibilities are endless.
Oh, you only have to go to a place like Afghanistan to realise how lucky we are as a country.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I always try and talk it up now. Like there's just too much negativity going around.
Yeah.
And we do live in a beautiful world too, I might add. Unfortunately, there's parts of it that have gone to hell in a handbasket that, with good diplomacy we can fix up. Not necessarily Australia, but we can always encourage sound diplomacy. But we do live in a beautiful world, and we've always got to remember that.
Oh, we're one of the luckiest countries on earth, but yeah, I just feel like that luck is just being dragged away from us a little bit, and that's through stuff like a cost of government. That's through stuff like speech is starting to get suppressed a little bit and stuff like that, and there's a bit of angst within the community. Now, look, just before we finish up, we had this discussion before, and I always think to myself, because the left seems pretty united, right? Like the Greens and Teals and Labor. They all seem to be on the same page. There's no one really branching out, starting any new type of parties. But in Australia, it's like you seem to have a whole bunch of... We have the moderates, who I think they're the Greens anyway. They're just like... They've just got some type of... They've somehow made their way into the Liberal Party when realistically they shouldn't be there. I've got a funny story I'll tell you after about a speech I did at a Liberal function. I started bagging the moderates out. And then they went nuts at me.
Yeah, right.
And then I upped my ante, and they all walked out.
Yeah.
But like, it seems to me that the Conservatives in the Liberal Party, then you have One Nation, then you have someone like yourself, and then you have it seems to be really fractured.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, or like, if I had control for one day over, let's say, like the right, or I had that much influence, like a unite the right.
Yep.
Like, why don't all these smaller parties come together and form like a reform party? What's happening?
Well,
in
we
the
should
UK?
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm working on that. I'm talking to I literally just got off the phone to another guy from another party before I came here. Unfortunately, I can't get a lot of other parties to come to the fore. So I can't do what I'm doing. Like, I'm running a party by myself. The reason why I had to start my own party was that when I lost my pre-selection with the Liberals after they cheated, I had to make a choice. Do I stay in politics or do I walk away? And, you know, I did think about walking away, but had a lot of people say stay. So the Liberals were close to me, that option. The coalition was close to me. Because I live in Queensland, Malcolm Roberts was already on the One Nation ticket. Notwithstanding, I have serious reservations about their corporate governance within the party. Clive Palmer and I spoke for a couple of weeks about he wanted to take over the People First brand like he ended up taking over Trumpeter Patriots. I seriously considered that, and I was literally signing on the dotted line until Clive said that basically he wanted to appoint a national spokesman, and I didn't want Clive to be the national spokesman. It can't be about Clive. It needed to be about policies, and I was very, we've got to stop making this about personalities. The Libertarians already had selected their Jim Wilmot. He'd been on the ticket for a year, so I had nowhere else to go. So if I had to stay in politics, I needed to be in a party to go above the line. Now, once we started the party, I then approached Family First and the Libertarians at the start of the year and said, how about we back Family First in South Australia? They've got a bit of a presence down here. We can back the Libertarians, Craig Kelly in New South Wales, and you can back People First in Queensland. And we all go in the same column. So that way then we don't lose preferences. Unfortunately, they didn't come to the fore on that. I did back the Libertarians. We did back the Libertarians in New South Wales because I thought Craig Kelly was, very brave in what he did throughout COVID.
Yeah. I follow a lot of his work.
Yeah. Funny guy too, when you know him personally. He's good guy.
Yeah.
And then in the end, and then we talked to Heart Party. So the Heart Party very kindly went behind with us in New South Wales and Victoria. And then we also spoke to the Katter Party, and Bob and Robbie were very kind in going. So in the end, we only did an alliance with the Katters. I'm very grateful to the Katters for what they did. Since then, we had a meeting in Sydney with the Libertarians, Family First, the Australian Citizens Party, Belconnen Party, and a couple of other minor parties. Since that meeting, the Libertarians have come back and said that they don't want to merge yet. I think they want to go it alone in the New South Wales state election, so that option's closed as well. So that only leaves a couple of other parties to go. So I'm still talking to the Hard Party, Australian Citizens Party at this stage. I do talk to the DLP as well. They're only small parties I accept. One Nation didn't go to that meeting in Sydney. They don't consider themselves a minor party anymore. That's what they said. They sent a letter. It was read out by Joel Jamal. They consider themselves a major party now because they've got representatives in every state. So they don't. And my problem with that is, well, okay, you got a centre up New South Wales and Western Australia on 6% of the vote. You relied on 8.3% from preferences from other minor parties. Like you're not there yet. So that's where we're at. But I agree with you. And I'm happy to merge, and wherever we can. It's just a question of making it happen, which is a lot harder said than done. And this has been going on. So Pauline and Clive, I don't know, they don't have the best of but they've been around for a long time. They've been around for 20 years, or 25 years, I think. Well, maybe not Clive in politics. Well, he was tied up with the Nationals until 2013. But so this has been going on for a long time. It needs to stop. Notwithstanding, I figure if we can lift the standard at least, so we've started branches of People First, no other minor party. The Libertarians do have branch meetings, but they don't have a big base for some reason. Their policies, they used to back the privatisation of infrastructure and high immigration and all this stuff. So some of their policies is just too... I don't think it's... Anyway, I don't want to sort of go into Libertarians, but apart from Libertarians, no other parties have had branches. So I've always been of the view a proper party should have branches for the reasons we spoke about before. You've got to go out and campaign. If you're relying on $50, if you have a subscription model of $50, which is what we have, then it's our members who are funding us, not a big donor.
Well, that's important, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we was talking about before.
Yeah.
Like, I've had a lot of people come to me trying to, I don't want to mention some stuff on air, but anyway, I've had a lot of big money try and come at me, trying to fund this thing.
Yeah.
And I've refused every single last
Yeah.
one that have come to me, and some I don't even reply to, and some I do speak to. But my Patreon program and my merch and my ad revenue is like what funds this. And I think to myself, if I need to keep my voice and my own personal views, it is important that I always stick to being funded by the people.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because that's where you get the most honesty out of myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, someone comes in like, can't say that.
That's right.
Don't talk about that.
Yeah.
And then straight away, that's called selling yourself out.
That's right. And that's why I call the party people first, because ultimately it's got to be run by the people and it's about the people.
Funded by the people as well.
Yeah, yeah. So that they're in control. Because the moment you walk away or let the big guys come in, you got the establishment running it, then, you lose control. Yeah. So, look, like I said, it's got to happen. I think you've probably got a better chance of the Nats leaving the Liberals at some point. I don't know that will happen this term. Littleproud really stuffed it up big time when he did split for that week and then he went back. The timing was wrong. Susan Lay's mother just recently passed away. Incredibly bad. That was incredibly distasteful to be putting pressure on her the week her mum died. Then the reasons that he gave weren't the same as the reasons he gave the party room, and then he backflipped and went back. I would love to see Matt Canavan, who I rate as the best politician.
I like him.
Yeah.
I need to reach out to him, actually.
Yeah, I was just going to say you need to get him on the show.
Yeah.
And when you get him on there and you can say, Gerard Rennick asked me to ask you this question, Matt. When are you going to go to the lower house, say win a seat in the lower house, and he can do it in Queensland and run for leader of the National Party, because we need Matt in the lower house.
Yeah, yeah.
In the same way, you feel the weight of responsibility now that you've got a really big podcast. Matt's got to step up to the plate, and he knows I think this, and take leadership of the Nats, because he's just a top bloke. He's incredibly loyal. He backs you to the hilt. He's incredibly intelligent, erudite, and he's very congenial. What I really like about Matt is he used to, in divisions, would go and sit with the Greens or the crossbench or whoever, and he's always joking. You can always hear Matt's laugh a mile away, right? But he's always joking with, and so because he, and that's really, really important. So, a couple of other senators there that, their answer to everything is we're going to get out of this, we're going to get out of that, we're not going to work with anyone. That's combative. That's not conducive to solving problems. Right? You do, even if sometimes you don't agree with someone, it doesn't mean to say you can't work with them or try and, work in a way that you get some outcome.
I had blokes in the army that I hated.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would work and I would do anything for them.
Yeah.
Because that's the job, right? You've got to work together as a team.
Yeah,
if you just sit there and argue with each other, you're only going to put Australia at risk.
Yeah. Yeah, so. and this is my problem with another party at the moment is that they just don't want to play ball, and it's like, well, it's not about you, it's about the greater good.
That frustrates me because Australian lives are being put at risk, and I don't say that lightly. Like let's say like people struggling with their power bills,
absolutely,
mental health is going up.
Yeah,
or like people can't afford the proper groceries, so their health goes down, or just something like that. But like.
You're right. Absolutely.
It frustrates me so much to hear that about certain parties that potentially won't come. Because, like, if everyone thinks they're Australia first, well, how about you put that aside and you actually join together? Like, if you're actually Australia first, then do it.
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
Otherwise, it's just like, well.
Yeah. And that's like, well, I had to withhold my vote from the Liberal Party back when those people were being injured by the vaccine. Because people were literally, being killed, being injured, losing their jobs. I mean, this stuff wasn't. I mean, even climate change, the energy bills, the increase in energy bills, it's like a slow python. It will eventually destroy us. But it's not like here 1 minute, and next minute you're injured in bed, with in hospital, paralysed down your right hand side, sort of stuff. And that's the thing. Politics, they go into that bubble and they don't realise, like, they carry on in an immature manner. So that's the other thing. Like, we want to lift it. That's why I keep talking. Like, we've got to keep talking positive. We've got to start thinking positive. We've got to start thinking solutions and visions rather than just carping on about the other side all the time. Just, forget about them. If you're in business, you don't talk about your competitor. You just focus on doing better. I mean, you're obviously an athlete. If you're running, you're always benchmarking yourself against your own performance, aren't you? And that's what we've got to do. So, people first, we're just under 3,000 members. We want to get to 5,000 members by 2028. We want to get up to 1 million following on social media. We want to get some more money in the bank so we can look after our candidates. So I'm very pleased to say all our candidates are people first. We refunded them their registration fee and their election costs, which One Nation don't do. One Nation, they've been caught on tape back in 17, I think it was, scheming ways to milk candidates for, to jack up the price so they could get more money back from the taxpayer. So we're very proud of the fact that we put our candidates in there all local based. I was in Wagga last Friday night and they were saying that One Nation stuck a Queenslander in their seat last year, and there were a couple of independents there and they were annoyed because One Nation beat the independents who were locals. But that's that's the presence. But it's not enough. We've got to be a serious party too. So it's not enough to drop in corflute candidates 3 weeks before an election and get 6% of the vote. That's not going to get us anywhere. We've actually got to get out there and start campaigning a year out. So, and that's what our plan is. We're going to elect candidates or open nominations for candidates at the start of 2027, and then back them in for a whole 12 months so that they can get out there and campaign in the community and get a local presence. Because that's what the Teals and Greens are doing. Like, a lot of people go, I can't believe that the Teals and the Greens get so many votes. That's because they go out and talk to people in the community. Yeah. They're not, they are on social media, but they don't just spend all their time on social media. They're actually getting out there, engaging with people. Like at West Sydney branch, we've already looked into getting a stand next year at the Hawkesbury show. It's $376 for a 3x3 stand. Do things like that. We get out and engage with people and talk to them.
You have to engage to your audience. You have to. I think that's where I think that's where I've been so probably, let's say successful, because I look down the camera and I talk to them. Like, I don't really do too much outside stuff because of a whole bunch of reasons, like the threats and stuff like that. But if you can get to people and talk to them, and like have a presence with them, understand who they are, let them understand who you are and who your candidates are and what they stand for. I mean, that's invaluable.
Yeah, and people, like, the other thing is too, like, we know what the problems are. People don't want to hear about the problems.
They want solutions.
They want solutions. And the other thing, and this is what I've learned too, if you keep banging on about the same problem all the time, even if someone agrees with you, they get sick of it very quickly. So if you're going on a date with a girl and all she ever does is complain about the same problem in and out, over and over and over again, it's like, well, you might look all right or whatever, but I don't want to, I don't want to put up with this, you know what I mean? I want someone that's going to be positive and, effervescent and all that sort of stuff, right? So, it's and that's the thing. You don't want to just get carp on about one or two issues. You want to actually, talk about a whole range of things and always try and sort of put a positive spin. That's at least my view now. Like, I'm not doing this to just be a professional whinger sitting on the sidelines as a crossbencher on 3 or 4% of the vote. Like, I want to actually get a genuine grassroots movement going again, where us, the people, the Australian people, can start directing the way this country's being run again, because they're not listening. We know that. I did a post last week how I don't really miss the fact that I'm not going to estimates because I would have just been stonewalled. I'm actually more excited by the fact of we've got 200 tomorrow night coming into Adelaide.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm really pleased with that. It's booked out a week ago. And I want to motivate these people to realise, the power is in our hands. That's what democracy is. It's a grassroots. That I referred to this American War of Independence in 1776 quite a lot. That's because that was the manifestation of the European Enlightenment. And the European Enlightenment started expressing ideas about overthrowing the hereditary rights of kings and queens, where instead of by having power coming top down, it's going to be a grassroots movement. And that's what I love about the States. They're so, they're just so... it's all about the people. It's interesting. I lived in the States there for in the late 90s, and I went fishing one day with one of my staff's husbands. And, his name was Woody and had a mow and a long mullet, an F-150, and we're going fishing. And I said to him, Woody, I said, what's the go with the guns in this place? Like, why are you guys all so, love your guns so much? And he just said, didn't hesitate. He said, we don't trust the government.
Yeah.
And back in the 90s, this is when the biggest political scandal in the 90s was when Bill Clinton was getting, involved with getting a blowjob from Monica Lewinsky,
Yeah.
right? And I was just thinking, as if, because the 90s was quite a very stable era, and it just seemed so, far-fetched that you'd be worried about your government. But of course, here we are 30 years later, and I see exactly, and I've come to appreciate the American War of Independence and the European Enlightenment. And obviously a lot of this stuff is all downstream of affluence, right, and technology that's made our lives better, and communication. I mean, like all these things, social media is good and bad too, of course, because you can be finding yourself at 11:30 and still scrolling.
Oh, yeah, you need to get off
scrolling
that.
through.
You need to stop that.
Yeah, scrolling through. I suspect you're scrolling through the same programs I'm scrolling through.
I actually banned myself, mate, because probably about a month ago when I was scrolling, I started seeing people clip my stuff up and then take the piss out of me. So I was just getting bullied too much online. So I'm like,
right.
no more
Okay.
scrolling.
Yeah.
So I don't scroll anymore.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah. No, it's funny. They seem to take you down certain rabbit holes, and you're like, really, why are you taking me there?
Yeah.
But it always seems very convincing when they do it, I have to say.
Yeah, well, when people start to bully me online, because my clips now get clipped up by people.
Yeah.
Because they see me just as an easy target on the right if they're left leaning. Then they'll clip it up and they'll be like, oh, this guy saying this, and then they'll take the piss out of me on there. And because they say my name, obviously it goes into my algorithm.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So I'll scroll and I'll be like, like every second time I scrolled, there was someone bullying me online. I'm like, it's time to stop scrolling.
Yeah.
So social media has been ruined for me, but it's actually been great because I've got a daughter. I don't need to be scrolling.
Yeah.
Or arguing with 18-year-olds or 20-year-olds online.
Yeah. And that's I think the thing. It's very combative and it's very polarizing.
Oh, yeah.
And and we need to get more out in the community, collaborative. And just listening to other people. And look, most people. They just want the government to fix their problem. Like get on and give, serve the people by service delivery and things like that. All this invasion, as I said in my maiden speech, the last 40 years, governments have sold all the infrastructure, that was meant to service, like power stations and things like that. And they've just marched on into the family home, the classroom, the bedroom, the corporate boardroom through super, doctors' waiting room and COVID, telling us how to live their lives. And we've just got to get that stuff out of our lives and let people go back to trust the people to manage their own lives. Not everyone will, but that's why we have a safety net called a pension, in public hospitals, public schools. But at the end of the day, most people, can look after themselves. I mean, superannuation's a great example. They say, we've got to have superannuation because Australians won't save for themselves. Before superannuation came in, Australians had the highest rate of home ownership in the world. And only 10% of people are retiring with a mortgage. Today, 40% of people retire with a mortgage. So they pull their super out anyway and pay off the mortgage. Yeah. So they just pay fees for 30, 40 years their working life for nothing.
Seems like a bit of a scheme.
Yeah. Well, it is.
Pay the fees.
$40 billion in fees come out of super every year.
There you go.
So we don't need any more financial engineers in this country. We need more, civil and electrical and mechanical engineers, really.
Well, look, thank you very much. We're at about an hour, almost shy of 2 hours, and we need to make sure we cut it there. So, mate, thanks very much for coming on.
Worries, Sam. Yeah.
Very much, like I said, I'm a fan. I voted for you last time.
Yeah,
I got my wife to vote for you as well because we sort of sat down and we said who could sort of best benefit it. But, mate, I'm really, really keen and eager to see how the next couple of years sort of unfold for you and the traction that you get. And, mate, I'm a fan, I'm a supporter, and wish you the best.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me on, and good luck with the program, and more importantly, good luck with your children.
Thanks very much,
first baby. Good on you.
Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to Two Worlds Collide podcast. If you want to support what I'm doing, you can grab some merch or jump on my Patreon program. Both links are in the description. Until next week, take care, guys.